If you're thinking of moving to Waterbury, Connecticut, I want you to slow down, but just for a minute. Not because Waterbury's all bad, but because most people who moved there didn't fully understand all their options. So here's the truth: most buyers don't actually want Waterbury. They want value, space, access, convenience, without the things that make daily life harder than it needs to be. And that's why today we're not talking about why Waterbury is wrong. We're talking about where buyers quietly move instead once they see the full picture. I'm breaking down 5 towns near Waterbury that consistently deliver a better lifestyle fit for most people and exactly why that is. I've lived in Connecticut my entire life. I run a real estate brokerage here, and my team helps people buy and sell houses around Waterbury and in Waterbury every single day. And I can tell you this with confidence: a lot of buyers start with Waterbury, and most don't end up there once they understand the trade-offs, the videos, the conversation we have before people commit. One thing I see all the time with relocation buyers is that Waterbury becomes the starting point of the search, but it's not the final answer. And that makes sense. When people pull up listings online, Waterbury jumps out immediately because the prices are lower than a lot of surrounding towns. But here's what tends to happen next: buyers start looking at a few homes, then they expand the map a little bit, maybe 10 minutes in either direction, and suddenly they start seeing options in towns like Watertown, Prospect, Naugatuck. And once they start physically driving those areas, the conversation shifts from "where's the cheapest house" to "where do we actually want to live every day?" That moment when the search stops being about price and starts being about lifestyle is where a lot of buyers begin reconsidering Waterbury. This video is the conversation we have before people commit. This is not a Waterbury hit piece. I love Waterbury. My wife is from Waterbury. Her family still lives in Waterbury. Waterbury has history, character, and affordability, but relocation isn't about loyalty. It's about fit. And for many buyers, Waterbury is the reference point, not the destination. Waterbury offers value compared to much of Connecticut, but that value comes with variability. Another thing people don't realize until they start touring homes here is how dramatically things can change street by street in a city environment. And that's not unique to Waterbury. You see it in cities everywhere. But when buyers are relocating and they don't know the area yet, the variability can feel unpredictable. One block might feel quiet and residential, 2 streets over might feel completely different. For some buyers, that's not a problem at all. But for others, especially people moving here with families or planning to stay long term, they often prefer towns where the overall feel of the neighborhood is more consistent. And that's exactly where some of these surrounding towns start to stand out. Housing stock, street to street experience, and long term resale confidence can change quickly depending on where you live. What most buyers actually want is predictable neighborhoods, reasonable commutes, less density, fewer surprises after closing, and confidence that their purchase still makes sense 5 or 10 years from now. That's where all these other towns come in. Before we get into the towns, there's something important that almost every relocation buyer tells us after they've been here a few weeks. They all say the same thing: "I wish I had understood the differences between these towns sooner." Because when you're looking online, a lot of places around Waterbury can look similar. Same price range, similar square footage, very similar photos. But once you start diving into them and driving by them, the lifestyle differences become very obvious. That's why these comparisons matter so much very early in your search, because they look similar on a map, but will feel very different in real life. Quick note: if you are relocating to Connecticut, or even just moving within the state, this comparison stage matters more than most people realize. Most buyers' regret doesn't come from the price, it comes from not understanding the alternatives early in the search. So let's get right into the towns that I see people buying in instead of Waterbury. Town number one is Watertown. Watertown is one of the most natural alternatives to Waterbury. It is close enough that nothing feels inconvenient. Daily life tends to feel calmer, more predictable. Neighborhoods are consistent. Buyers often feel a noticeable shift the moment they start driving around. Watertown appeals to people who want experience without density. You still get access to shopping, services, commuting routes, but without the same variability you see block to block in a city like Waterbury. Many buyers who move from Waterbury to Watertown say the biggest difference isn't the house, it's how relaxed everyday life feels. It's different. Another reason Watertown tends to attract buyers looking near Waterbury is the layout of the town itself. Watertown developed a more traditional New England town rather than a dense city. That means you tend to see more residential neighborhoods that branch off from the main roads rather than houses stacked up closely along a busy corridor. For a lot of buyers, that difference changes the entire daily experience. Your street feels quieter. Traffic tends to stay on the main routes. And when people imagine living somewhere for 10 or 15 years, those small daily differences start to matter more than they expected. Town number two is a little close to my heart. It's my hometown, Prospect. Prospect is one of the clearest lifestyle upgrades near Waterbury. Sitting high in elevation, Prospect feels quieter, more residential, almost immediately. Streets are calmer, and the overall layout feels more intentional. Buyers who choose Prospect usually want to stay close to Waterbury for work or family, but want a very different day-to-day environment. Unexpected buyer insight: people often assume Prospect is further away than it really is. Commute perception is actually one of the biggest misconceptions buyers have when they start looking around Waterbury. People will sometimes rule out towns like Prospect or Middlebury because they think it adds way too much to their commute. When you actually map it out, the difference is 5 minutes or less depending where someone works. When buyers realize that, it completely changes how they evaluate the area. Because if the commute is basically the same, then the decision becomes about environment, and that's where Prospect often wins people over. In reality, commute times are nearly identical. Town number three, Naugatuck. Naugatuck, Connecticut is a value-focused alternative with a completely different structure. Quick shout out to Mayor Hess in Naugatuck. He's doing great things for the town. He is passionate about the city, and it shows with everything they are developing. Naugatuck is its own town. It's not a small city, and that matters. Neighborhoods feel more contained, access to outdoor space is better, and buyers often get more house for the money. Naugatuck works well for people who want affordability, but also want room to breathe, physically and financially. Buyers are often surprised on how much outdoor access Naugatuck offers compared to what they expected. Outdoor access is something buyers don't always think about until they've been living somewhere for a while, but it ends up being a bigger factor than people expected. Being able to get outside easily, whether it's parks, trails, just a quieter residential street, it changes how people experience where they live. Towns like Naugatuck often surprise buyers in this category. You still have affordability, but you also have access to things like hiking areas, parks, rec spaces. People don't necessarily expect that when they start looking outside of Waterbury. Quick reality check for anybody relocating here. One of the biggest mistakes buyers make around Waterbury is assuming they need to pick a town before they visit the area. In reality, The smartest buyers do the opposite. They pick 3 or 4 towns, spend a day or two driving through them, grabbing lunch, having coffee, and just pay attention to how each area feels. Try the grocery stores. Spend a little time and get to know where you're buying. Because sometimes the town you expected to love ends up being the one you would cross off the list instantly. The town you barely considered ends up being your favorite. That happens way more than you think. Time for an important disclaimer, because this definitely matters. There's no universal best town, so you should always do some research on your own. Research the crime, research the safety. Look at greatschools.org for school research. Be informed. Don't have regret after your purchase. You want to get out and walk neighborhoods at different times of the day. Go back in the morning, in the afternoon, at night, go during the week, go on the weekends, go in different seasons. Get a good feel for where you're going. This video is going to help you understand fit, but not exactly rankings. Town number 4, Middlebury, Connecticut. Middlebury is for buyers who prioritize calm, quiet, less dense, and more residential by design. People who move here usually want peace, space, slower day to day, and they want to be disconnected from major routes. Middlebury appeals strongly to buyers who value environment over convenience. They still want access when they need it. Many buyers don't even consider Middlebury until they visit. Then it jumps to the top of their list. Town number 5 is Oxford, and this is a great option. Oxford is a step-up option near Waterbury. You find newer homes, large lots, and a more modern suburban layout. The town attracts buyers thinking long-term, not just about purchase price, but about lifestyle and resale. Oxford often feels like the place people move after they've outgrown their first home. Buyers often underestimate how quickly Oxford has developed and how strong long-term demand remains. If you're deciding between Waterbury and surrounding towns, here's something worth remembering when you're relocating. The goal is not to find the perfect town. That doesn't exist. The goal is to find the town that matches your priorities the best. Some buyers genuinely love Waterbury because of the value it gets from city access, the affordability, the proximity to work. Other buyers realize pretty quickly they prefer a quieter town environment. Neither choice is wrong, but understanding the differences before you buy can make a huge difference in how happy you are with your decision 5 years from now. And that's really the purpose of a comparison like this. Not to rank towns, but to help buyers understand the full picture before committing. If you're deciding between Waterbury and surrounding towns, this is exactly the comparison we walk through with buyers every day. Sometimes Waterbury is the answer. More often, one of these towns fits better once you zoom out and look at the lifestyle, not just the price. Clarity early saves stress, money, and regret later. One last thing worth mentioning before we wrap up. When buyers move to this part of Connecticut, they usually care about 3 things: location, lifestyle, and long-term confidence about their purchase. The reason towns like Watertown, Prospect, Middlebury, Naugatuck, Oxford keep showing up in all these conversations is because they tend to balance all of those things really, really well. They're close enough to major routes, calmer residential environments, housing markets tend to feel way more stable over time, and for a lot of buyers, that balance ends up being the deciding factor. Let's talk about some of the objections we hear. But Waterbury is cheaper. Sometimes, until you factor in the condition, the variability, the resale confidence. There's a lot that goes into price. I don't want a long commute. Most of these towns are closer than people assume. Plan it out. Go drive it and see exactly what your commute actually will be. Some people say, I have to live in Waterbury because I want convenience. That all depends on what kind of convenience actually matters. Waterbury is not wrong. It's just not the automatic answer. If you want value and predictability, access and calm, these 5 towns deserve a serious look. Drop a comment below and let me know which town surprised you most. And if you're planning a move to Connecticut, reach out. I am passionate about real estate here in Connecticut. I'll tell you the best places to go. Heck, I'll even tell you the shortcuts to get from one place to the next. Informed decisions always win. Give me a call.